MB 266.
I grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania, the coal mine capital of the world. Well, it was a good place to grow up. I was born in 1939, so I was there when the war was going on, the Second World War. I remember the air raids. I remember you couldn't buy butter. You had to buy margarine. It was white, and you had to color it to make it look like butter. And we played out in the street with our friends. We went sleigh riding down the hills on the roads back then. And I had a neighbor that came riding down one of the hills and went under a car and hit her head, and she died. I'll never forget that. Eleanor Jones was her name. I remember going to her funeral. It was the first time I ever saw a body in a casket, and it's bothered me ever since. So I don't like to go to see people, dead people. When I started school when I was 4 years old. They don't do that today. So when I was a senior, I was 16 years old. And went to Charles Sumner Elementary School. I still keep in touch with a lot of those people that I went to school with in high school. A lot of them have passed away since. The music I grew up with as a kid was, I guess you'd call it popular music. You had Frank Sinatra, Perry Como. You had all those old singers that sang like the classical old pop songs. And something that we're missing today. And then rock and roll came out in the 50s, and all the kids went nuts over rock and roll. So that's why we had the dances. We'd go to the Willard School canteen on Wednesday, and we'd go to Washington Hall in Dunmore on Fridays. So we were always busy doing something. Went to West Scranton High School, which was the Invaders. We had one of the best football teams. We were always winning the conferences, and it was a lot of fun. We had dances every Wednesday and Friday. We went roller skating at the roller skating rink, so we always had a lot of fun. I played in the band. I played the trumpet in the band, and I was on the senior dance committee. We were the first class, because it would have been 1955, 56, that introduced rock and roll. Rock and roll was just coming out big, and we were the first ones to get some of the old rock and roll records to play. So yeah, we were the innovators there. Yeah, high school was a lot of fun because I had sort of a mixed course. It was called a general course. I had a little bit of everything. I had tin shop. I had printing shop where you had to set the type. I had wood shop where you would build a lamp. It was a lot of fun. And then we had one of the best classes I ever took was typing. It helped me all through my life because computers came out many years later, and knowing how to type really was a benefit. I'm glad I took that. That was one of the best things I ever learned in school. I'd have to say is typing. After high school, the month after high school, I joined the Air Force, and I was in Strategic Air Command. Well, when I went in as a mechanic on single engines, fighters, but they needed people to work on multi-engine bombers, so I ended up going into Strategic Air Command and working on the B-47 bombers. I'll never forget the day I left for basic. I remember walking out of my front porch, and my mother coming behind me, and I could feel her eyes burning through my back as I was walking down the street going to the bus station. I know it had to be hard on her to see her young son going away, because all of her kids always stayed at home. And then I walked about 4 or 5 blocks down, and Lord and behold, there was my girlfriend that I just dated the night before in her yard waving to me as I was walking over town to the bus stop. And then when I got to the bus stop, I got the tickets for everybody, but I forgot a ticket for me, so I ended up paying for my own ticket to go to Wilkes-Barre, where we caught the train. The train took us on to Texas to basic training. But it was an experience. Basic training was really tough because I went in July, and Texas is unbearable. Went to San Antonio. They used to give us, because of the heat, they would give us salt pills, which today they wouldn't do that. They'd give you water, because salt is not good to be taken when you're sweating and everything. We'd have big salt rings around our armpits. And then I ended up going to Amarillo for my training on the engines and jet engines and stuff like that. And I remember seeing the tumbleweed coming in, and that's where I got my tattoo that I have on my arm at Amarillo, Texas. I think I paid $15. It's a dagger with my name on it. And I met a guy when we were leaving basic training. All this time, this guy was in my barracks, and I never got to know him. But it turned out the order said that both of us were going to Plattsburgh Air Force Base up in New York State. So I got to meet him before we went, and we became best of friends. We were roommates. We went to England together, and he's still alive. He lives in Michigan. We were like brothers. I used to take him home to Scranton on leave, and he was such a good guy. I still miss him to this day. But he's still alive, and we keep in touch. Plattsburgh Air Force Base was 60 miles from Montreal. So the winters were frigid up there. It was like 20 below zero. And when you would walk out of the barracks, you'd feel your nose freezing up, turning into ice like. And it was really cold. I had 2 what they call AFSCs, like I was a jet mechanic, and then I specialized in fuel systems. So I ended up in the fuel system shop. There was only like 6 of us in that fuel systems, including my best friend. And you'd go up in the bomb bay where they would carry the atomic bombs and stuff like that. And there was fuel cells all through that airplane. I think there was 14 fuel cells on that airplane. And you'd have to crawl into the fuel cells, and if you had to change a sump pump or whatever, or if there was a leak, you had to fix it. But they would put a hose up from a machine that would throw heat into so you'd be warm up there. You wouldn't be freezing. It would be nice and warm. You could not wear wool, like wool socks or anything like that, because that could spark and blow up the airplane. And so it was an experience. Well, when I got out of the Air Force, ended up getting married kind of young. And there wasn't many jobs in Scranton at the time. If I wanted a job as an aircraft mechanic, I'd have to move to New York, LaGuardia, or one of those major airports out there to get a job with an airline, and I didn't want to move, so the jobs were very few. So I was a milkman for Crowley's Dairy. I was a bread man for Mrs. Bear's Bakery. I worked in a on an assembly line for Roovers and Lodge. And I worked for a guy by the name of, was United Delivery was his company, Sal Zumo. And he handled air freight from the local airport up there in Avoca. We also delivered to homes and stores and stuff like that, different things. And that's how I got into the air cargo business. When I got out of the Air Force, my sister Marie was best friends with a girl named Seal Marsh. And her brother came to me and said that he sang in a group and that they were looking to get some work. They knew I was looking for a job, so I met one of the guys that he sang with was Don Manzo. And we went to Liberty, New York to be busboys because I was the only one who had a car. And on the way up there, they mentioned that they sang in a group and that there was an advertisement in the paper from a guy by the name of Dick Plotkin who ran Dick and the Halos, and the group had broken up and they were going to see if there was a match, that they were going to join with them, they were going to meet with them. And I told them about the time I was in the Air Force that I sang with some of the African-American guys. We would just sit around and harmonize. And so they said, maybe you want to try out for the group. I said, yeah, we'll do that. We'll see when we get back. So we went out there to Liberty, New York, and we never, they ended up making us clean things and stuff like that. It wasn't open yet as far as being a busboy, so we ended up in a couple of weeks coming back home. And then we met with Mike Lanzo, who was the other singer in the group. So he would have been about 18 years old. These guys were young. And Donnie was the oldest. He was older than me. And we met with Dick Plotkin, who played the piano, and we started harmonizing, and we became Dick and the Halos. And then later on, we decided we wanted to go to New York to see if we could make it big. And Dick's parents wouldn't allow him to come, so we changed the name of the group to the Precisions. So it was just the four of us. It was Donnie, Mike, Kenny, and me. And we went out to New York to find management out there. And, we interviewed and stuff like that. And we started doing background singing. We lived out there for about a year. It was a tough because there was a time we went without eating for 2 days. And the manager that we had, his name was Nick Quesado. He sang with the group by the name of the Colts. And he was friends with the Platters. And the Colts had a hit record, Adorable Baby. And he also managed the teenagers after Frankie Lyman left the group. And I'll never forget when he asked Sherman, who sang bass, to loan me $20 so we could eat. And so Sherman loaned me $20. And back then, you didn't need much to eat because you can get 2 for $1 hamburgers and stuff like that. We all got jobs, but you got to wait like a week or two before you get your first paycheck. That's why we had it tough there. We peddled telephone books, and I finally got a job with a company. I think it was called, might have been Roovers and Lodge. I'm not sure. And Donnie worked for a pizza place. Kenny and Mike, I don't know what they did. They all got jobs, though. Mike would always get food sent in from his parents, so we'd always have something to eat. And you'd take the subway to work. And, we did a lot of background singing. We made some money doing some background singing, too, for some people out there like Jack Bailey, who was from Canada, was one of the guys that we did his background
I
songs.
thought that my life had been fulfilled, 'cause every time we kissed she gave me such a thrill. I didn't stop to realize.
And when we got back home, we did some other people like Tommy Genova and Jo Vitale, who had a hit song. I think it hit number 40 on the charts. And yeah, it was an experience. The building that was famous out there, I don't know if it still is, it was called the Brill Building. I think it was 1619 Broadway. And they had a lot of little record companies in there, like Hull Records and stuff like that. And we did a trial for Hull Records, didn't hear anything from them, and then we found out later that they called, I think it was Donnie's wife, or Dick, I'm not sure it was Dick or Donnie, or Dick. They called Dick, and he says he told Donnie's wife about it, but we never got the message. So we could have had something there maybe, because they had a lot of hit groups and stuff like that. But it was challenging to live out in New York City. You know, you would think that a big city like that, you'd meet a lot of friends and stuff, but everybody seemed to be to themselves. And seemed to be very lonely to me. You know, all we met was the people trying to make it. You know, we met Dion in the CBS restaurant. He took a piece of my bagel. We met a lot of the guys that made it pretty big. And it was very, very challenging to try and make it. It's not everybody makes it out there. It's tough. But we kept breaking off management and stuff like that. They give us contracts and say you're going to be making so much thousands of dollars within 6 months, and nothing ever happened. They didn't even record us. So, you get scammed. It's a tough racket. But it was a good experience to go through that. All we wanted to do was make it big so we can, it would be good for our families and we could feed our families and stuff. But it never happened. I'd have to say the group was great, though. They really liked us. Mike Lanzo had one of the best voices. He still does to this day. We recorded on Scranton Records, and we had Dream On. Yeah, Dream On, and You Can't Play Games With My Heart. We recorded. We didn't write those songs, but we wrote a lot of our own songs that we recorded. And then when we came back home, it turns out that Dick Plotkin had his own record company called Deborah Records, and that's where we did most of our recordings of songs that we wrote and stuff. Was on his label. It was still, even though Dick had a record company, it was just the four of us that went from the Precisions, and then we changed it to there was another name we had. It was about a park in New Jersey. Yeah, we were called the Palisades. When they pressed some of our records, it was I think 100 or 1,000 records pressed with the name of the Palisades, and we had to change it because someone else had that name copywritten. So we ended up with the name of the Magics that we did, and we did a lot of stuff. We recorded a song from a local guy in Scranton, Steve Budash, at the fair, and on that record, it was just me, Mike, and Donnie, because Kenny was living out in Los Angeles at the time. So it was just three of us on that record. We still sang. We went and did some small jobs and stuff like that, singing. And even when we were living back in Scranton, we were doing stuff like shoveling the snow on the railroads when the snowstorms would come, and you'd work like round the clock cleaning off tracks and stuff like that to make some money. But it was a very interesting career. A song that I co-wrote with Donnie was called "Sweet Dreams," and it's published under BMI, under our names. We used to write a lot of our songs with the guitar and a bar that you just hit the chords. So I'll never forget Donnie coming to my house on Bromley Avenue, and we were sitting on my swing, and that's where we wrote Sweet Dreams, the song. And that, to me, that song could have been a hit if the right people got a hold of it. It was a great song, not just because I wrote it, but if you listen to it, it's a very good song, and Mike did a good job on there too as the lead. But yeah, it was a fun time. Of course, I was married and had ended up with 2 kids. So I couldn't around the early 60s. The music business didn't do much for my marriage because I was living in New York with the guys and got married too young to begin with. And so that marriage didn't last. And in the early 60s, we broke up. I went my way, and I think Mike went into the National Guard. And we never got back together again for almost like 30 years in 1991 when we got together to do an oldies show. And we've been together ever since, up until 2 years ago, because we're all getting older now. Donnie passed away at 52 years old. He was 52 years old when he passed away. I was his best man. I was his son's godfather. And my son Jeff was the godfather of his son's son. Donnie was a special guy. He was good. He was very good at makeup, doing makeup. Like we used to around Halloween and stuff. He would make us up as zombies or stuff like that, and he was very good at it. He was. We became best of friends because, as I said, I was his best man. And actually, I was the one to introduce his wife to him. And was his best man and his son's godfather and stuff like that. And on his tombstone, I had inscribed "Sweet Dreams" on there. It's up at the Cathedral Cemetery in Scranton. So that song will always be there. But he was a special guy, one of my best friends. His son sang with us after Donnie passed away. Has a great voice. One of his big songs is "Cara Mia." Whenever he sings "Cara Mia," the crowd goes nuts. And we brought Paulette into the group too in 1991. After we did that first show, we called her up on stage, and Mike and her did a duet, and then the group started up again, and Paulette sang with the girl group called the Gales. you know, but they had broken up too way back in the 60s. And she's got a good voice too. We sang with did some background for Tommy Genova, and one on which I know the Gales sang, and then we were on the background too. Paulette sang, she came and recorded with us out in New York, and she did A Night to Remember, which we wrote, and the Bong Bong song, which was a hit by another guy, I think his name was Gennaro. And if you go on Facebook, he praises the way we did that song. He can't get over, you know, he liked the way we did it. And the Bong Bong song. Well, I Love You Madly Dear, I think it was. We call it the Bong Bong song because it's all bong bongs in the background. We also did Tex Amato, who was a country western singer. We sang behind him on a record. Jan Tanzy in New York, when we lived in New York, she was on Broadway, and she recorded a Chinese song, so we had to have a vocal coach come in and show us what the words were. I don't think the record was ever released. I can't find anything on it. But she was a young girl and trying to make it big on Broadway. So she's done some Broadway shows.
Chapel bells, I hear them ringing.
The biggest song that we had as a group was Chapel Bells, and it was a song written by the Monotones, who sang Book of Love, only they called it She Never Loved Me, or She Never Loved You, or something like that. And we recorded that, but we were going to record a song that was on Walt Disney, Someday My Queen Will Come. It was, the song is Someday My Prince Will Come. We changed it to Someday My Queen Will Come. And we had that thing down perfect. To me, I thought that would have been a hit record. But for some reason, maybe we couldn't get the rights, that we ended up doing Chapel Bells. And that hit number 3 in the Northeast, up towards Binghamton, New York, and down towards Philly, and mostly in the Scranton, Wilkes-Barre area. It was a local hit.
Well, they call me the lover, 'cause I got a lot of women.
Now, Tommy, I graduated with Tommy, and he ended up getting murdered. He had a lot of records. He had a lot of songs out. The Lover was his big one that he wrote. They Call Me the Lover. But yeah, he ended up. They don't know who killed him. They still don't to this day. It's still a cold case. He was a nice guy, but he had a roving eye. He used to mess around a lot with a lot of different women, even married women, and you know, that could be one of the reasons that someone ended up shooting him. You know, he was on the school board, and I think that when he got killed, he was at a school board meeting. That when he was in the parking lot, someone shot him there. So it had to be someone that knew him, or, you know, they don't just shoot you for nothing. Especially in Scranton, it was a safe place. Well, Tommy was just popular locally. He never went like nationally or anything like that. But you know, he used to do shows, and we sang on we did a lot of background for him on his records, and didn't have the best voice. He tried to make it on his looks like Fabian did. You know, Fabian wasn't the best of singers, but he was a good-looking guy, and the girls liked that. And that's what Tommy was trying to do, is get in there on his looks. But I'll never forget one of our high school reunions that he sat on the table with me and my wife and his wife. We sat at the same table. But other than that, he had I liked his brother. His brother died too, but he was a neat guy. He served in the armed forces. Might have been during the Second World War or the Korean War. I'm not sure.
Who, Tommy Genova?
No, his brother. Yeah, his brother served in either the Korean War or the Second World War. But, the Genovas had a little market, like a little store on Washburn Street, Scranton. And right now, across the street, his daughter is married to a guy that owns a little club called the Villa Maria. And we did some shows there at the Villa Maria, and they're still doing shows there to this day. But his daughter, you know, works the bar and stuff like that. But other than that, that's about it with Tommy. Well, the Magics broke up because, you know, I eventually left the group. I was the only one that was married, and my marriage was broken up. And I have a little story on that one, because when I met my last wife, who has since passed away, you know, we never had any money to do anything. We would go for rides in the country, and I had a 1962 Chevy Impala convertible. We'd put the top down and go for a ride. And one day we're going for a ride in the country, and on the radio comes one of our records, "Stop Leading Me On." And she said, "Wow." She says, "I have this record. I love this song." And I never told her that I sang in a group, because I didn't want music to get in the way of our marriage, or not our marriage, but our relationship. And so I told her, I said, "Yeah, I sang with this group." And she didn't believe me. She says, "You know, I don't believe you. You know, I have this record." I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, I'll introduce you to the guys." So I got a hold of the guys and introduced Linda to the guys, and she was all excited about it. And she would, you know, sometimes they would come down after we got married. They would come down to my house in West Pittston. They wanted to start up again, and we would rehearse down in the basement and stuff like that. But nothing happened, because I eventually moved to Georgia with my family. One day in 1991, in this house in the kitchen, I got a phone call from Dick Plotkin, and Linda's standing right by me in the kitchen, and I said, "What are you, nuts?" And she says, "Who is that?" And I said, "It's Dick Plotkin. He wants us to get together to do an oldies show." And she says, "I want you to do it." And she pushed me back into singing again, even though I really didn't want anything to interfere with my marriage. And she would come to all our shows, and she just loved the group. We did get together, and I'd go up there. You know, it was a long drive. It was like 3-hour drive for me to go from Delaware to Scranton. And so, you know, we went up and rehearsed, and I would stay at Dick's house. And we did the first show. All my family came. My brother, my sisters. I still have a picture of all of them together. And Paulette was there dancing with her boyfriend. And Mike ended up calling her on stage to do a duet. So we decided, hey, why not, we get the group back together, we'll bring Paulette in, but get a regular band. Mike's band was an accordion. It was an Italian band. They had a fiddle, an accordion and stuff like that. It wasn't really rock and roll. So we decided to do that, and we worked on getting songs and sets ready, and we got a good group of guys together. George Albrecht, Bobby Petrus, who has since passed away, Pat Hopkins, who has since passed away, and his brother used to play the keyboards, but then it ended up with Lenny Dobson playing the keyboard. So we started doing some shows, and we were packing them in like 300-400 people at a clip, and then doing the Italian festival up in Scranton every year, and so we were pretty busy doing the Genetti's and the Villa Maria. We're doing a lot of little shows all over the place, and it was a lot of fun. But it was work, because it was tough for me to be traveling up there like that, a 3-hour drive, but I'd usually have to stay over. I'd stay over at Dick's house, and Dick was married to one of the Gales, a Carol, and they got divorced, but they're still friends to this day. She has MS, and so he really had the house to himself. And it wasn't bad staying there. So we worked hard at it, and a lot of rehearsing, but it came pretty good. Mike was the main lead, and then we brought Donnie. Donnie was another lead, and Paulette was another lead. So we had 3 good leads, 3 strong leads, and there wasn't anything we couldn't do. Like, Paulette was great doing that last song like that. So if we did a wedding or something like that, everybody loved that song. And so about 2 years ago, the group sort of split up. Kenny wasn't with us all those years because he lived in Los Angeles. The first song we did that he wasn't with us was at the fair, as I said earlier. It was just me, Donnie, and Mike on that one. Kenny finally came back in the last few years. So he came back to live in Scranton, but he was living out in the West Coast, so trying to make it big in the movies. He did some small parts in movies and stuff like that. But other than that, everybody else is still hanging in there. Dick Plotkin was 78 years old yesterday. Kenny's 78. Mike's going to be 78, and I'm 80. So we're all getting up there in age. But, I miss the music, and I know Kenny does. And Dick's always trying to get us back together to do a goodbye show or something like that. But it's hard to get us back together anymore. If I lived up there, it would have been easier, But it's just a long haul to go. And then there was, we brought little Joey, my son Jeff. When he was a little kid, he brought him on stage to do some of the skits that I used to do. And then he started singing, and we let him open the shows for us, and he came by the name of Texas Jeff. I always did a good job, and he always loved the Magics. He used to come in the back room when we were rehearsing and stuff like that. But we had a lot of fun. It was more of a show, not just singing, but you know, we would do skits like Mike would wear a priest outfit and he'd be Father Capuzzo with an Italian accent, and I would be interviewing him, and you could hear my wife just screaming with laughter in the background at some of the stuff. But it was funny as heck.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome direct from the Vatican, the only priest you want when you're in that confession box. Where is he? The lovable Father Capuzzo. Father, what do you have in the bag?
What do I have in the bag? Oh, this is something. It's a new invention. You know what it is? Let me show you what it is. This is amazing.
Oh, that's a thermos.
Yeah, I was walking in the store today, and I look at the salesman. He's putting them on the shelf, and I said, "What is that?" He said, "That's a thermos." I said, "Well, what does it do?" He said, "It keeps the hot things hot and the cold things cold." I said, "That's a fantastic." I said, "Give me one of those."
What do you have the thermos?
Well, I got a cup of coffee and 2 popsicles in here.
I'd have to laugh just doing it, because Mike, when we would do those skits, he wouldn't let me read ahead of time because he wanted me to stumble. He thought that was funny. And we did a couple of Capuzzos. I think I have 1 or 2 on Facebook. I know there's 2 we recorded, but with Father Capuzzo. And Mike would just, like, when I'm interviewing him, he'd be at the microphone, but he'd be looking at me, and I'd say, "No, look at the audience. Don't be staring at me." That was funny. But other than that, it was a good run.